This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
A very warm welcome to all of our participants joining us today for this event on how the best win in Asia, business models from companies that are succeeding in Asian markets. This event draws from the recently launched report in August this year, Winning in Asia, Creating Long-Term Value. My name is Mukund Narayanamurthy, and I am the CEO of Asialink Business, Australia's National Centre for Asia Capability, established by the Commonwealth Government, Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources, the University of Melbourne, and the Maya Foundation to help create an Asia-capable workforce in Australia. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are present today and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending the online event today. As many of you are aware from having attended the launch of the Winning in Asia report in August, the report is a partnership of Asialink Business, the Australian Institute of Company Directors, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and the Sid and Fiona Maya Family Foundation. Winning in Asia seeks to dispel many of the commonly held myths and perceptions of the challenges of doing business with our region. It draws from over 300,000 data points of fresh evidence and 250 consultations to inform findings and recommendations. It considers major questions posed over a long period of time by Australian business leaders, policymakers, and investors. For instance, does offshore expansion lead to superior returns for the shareholders of Australian companies? Which companies, Australian and non-Australian, have grown market share, profitability, and returns from their engagement in Asian markets? What are the capabilities that Australian boards and senior executive teams need in order to engage effectively with Asian markets? And finally, how can Australian companies best manage the risks associated with doing business in the region? Together with a task force of some of Australia's preeminent business leaders and our knowledge partners, we have considered these questions, which have profound implications for Australian business, the investor community, and for government. I would once again like to thank all task force members profiled here for generously contributing their time, their expertise, and their networks in the development of this report. They've each played an invaluable role in validating the report's direction, findings, and recommendations. Thank you again for your leadership. I would also like to acknowledge again the extraordinary contribution of the Boston Consulting Group, Elliston Capital, and Cooper Investors for the efforts that they made in working with Asialink Business in the development of this report. The digital launch event in August of this year attracted an online audience of almost 1,000 participants from Australia and across the region. And we were delighted to have the Honourable Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Simon Birmingham, officially launched the report. Since the launch, we have been involved with several events to share the findings and recommendations of the report to audiences across Australia and Asia. We've also reached over 74 million people to date through the extensive media coverage. This event is one of two major flagship events planned to further share the report's rich findings and focuses on how the very best Australian companies succeed in Asian markets. It draws heavily, in particular, from the section of the report that focuses on business models and includes 22 case studies. So I'm delighted that today we are joined by four extraordinary leaders who will share with us how their companies have developed winning strategies to succeed in Asian markets. Our speakers include Dig Howard, CEO and President of Cochlear, who will speak about Cochlear's plans in China, the key factors essential to succeed in China for Cochlear, and the importance of long-term planning. I'd also like to thank Dig for his time in the development of the case study on Cochlear, which can be found on page 50 of the Winning in Asia report. Andrew Barkler, CEO at IDP Education, will speak about the digital transformation that IDP has undertaken over the last 5 years and the integration of its physical and digital network and how critical acquisitions have delivered strategic value. I'd also like to thank Andrew for his time in the development of the case study on IDP Education, which can be found on page 53 of the report. Emil Russo, CEO at Digivisor, will speak about expanding into Asia as a private company, the importance of patient capital, and the importance of being agile in a dynamic operating environment in our region. Scott Speedy, Regional Head Asia and New Zealand and CEO of Singapore at CBA, will speak about CBA's strategy to compete in Asian markets, its approach to assisting Australian companies expanding into Asia, and key success factors for Australian companies preparing to expand. Following their presentations, I will facilitate a panel discussion with our 4 speakers. I would like to highlight that this event is being recorded. I would like to invite all of you as participants to share your comments and questions for the panel session. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Dick Howard to speak on Cochlear's plans in China.
Mukund, thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. It's terrific to have the opportunity to just talk briefly about Cochlear and particularly Cochlear in China. Just let me start with a bit of background. I mean, Cochlear is obviously a global company. We have customers in 180 different countries around the world. So therefore, we have people, customers, and many employees right across Asia. And I think an opening comment I'd make is that to succeed in Asia, you don't have an Asian strategy. You actually have multiple different country strategies, because our approach in Japan and China and Korea and India and Indonesia is different in each of those countries, dependent on local circumstances. But now let me move to talking a bit about China. And I think importantly, again, across any Asian country, but certainly for us in China, is that we've always taken a very long-term perspective. We first went into China more than 25 years ago now. And when Cochlear went into China, there was no cochlear implantation. So we had to build the industry as well as build the customer base, the medical expertise. So we trained surgeons, we trained audiologists, we had to build awareness amongst consumers, and we had to influence government, because government in pretty much every country is a significant player in the healthcare space. So that take a very long-term view. So going in, you're going to spend money, and you're not going to get, and we didn't get much return to start with, because it takes time. So that long-term perspective is very important. So we did go in 25 years ago, and we slowly built awareness and understanding, and awareness across government over time, to say that today, now 25 years later, we have more than 40,000 people in China who hears with one of our implants. And the important part about our business in doing that is that these people, we have a relationship with people for their lifetime, because they depend on that implant for their hearing for their lifetime, and they need spare parts and accessories to keep them hearing. The implant, we hope, will last a lifetime. That's part of our design goal. But the external parts and support, customer service, continues throughout a lifetime. So in terms of our market entry too, we did obviously staged our investment. So when we went in initially, it was with a small number of people. We partnered with distributors, and obviously with distributors, we have a variable cost, because we're paying a margin or a commission per sale. But over time, we have added our own people into China, and gradually taken back the responsibility of building relationships and generating demand and doing training from the distributors to our own employees. So we've now got a few hundred people of our own employees up in China who have direct relationships with major surgeons, hospitals, generate that demand. So that step-by-step building, I think, is very, very important. And taking distributors, getting distributors early, choosing the right distributors, keeping them focused has been very important, but then also over time, taking more direct responsibility ourselves. And over that time, we've learned a lot. too. And we've built a significant organisation, and we've just recently taken the next step, which is to build a factory in China. So that factory is now built. We're in the commissioning stage. We've done that in Chengdu and Sichuan province, and all of that and building our organisation is more and more about us becoming much more, as much as we can be, a local company within China that competes against both local and multinational competition, but very much we want to look more and more have a very strong Chinese presence through our organisation, through our factory. In terms of products, we've had to, in China and many other markets, have to think about our product configuration and our pricing to cater for different socioeconomic tiers. Whereas in developed or Western market, healthcare markets, typically we're selling at one price with latest technology. What we find in China and other markets is that we sell the latest product that we have around the world, but we also sell other configurations to manage lower price points. And in each of these, we're aiming for the same quality, but we are changing our product features and offering to try to meet different price points. So in summary, I think it's very important to take a long-term view in China, to build the business step by step, to partner with the right people, to have very strong local employees and organisation, and give them the autonomy to compete and locally and to learn and react to the local market. So with that, I will finish and hand over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thanks, Dig, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to IDP's transformation over the last 5 years. Today, IDP feels much more like a startup than a company that has a 50-year history, a global history, predominantly focused in on Asia. When we began this transformation, as we began it, we just completed our IPO in 2015, and the business had been performing extremely well going into the IPO, based on an organic and a physical expansion or analog expansion strategy. We were operating student recruitment and counselling facilities through 30+ countries across Asia, assisting students connect with education in the English destination countries: Australia, Canada, the US, Ireland, the UK, and New Zealand. And in 50 countries around the world, we were operating English language testing businesses. And predominantly at that time, that was paper-based testing, and from student recruitment and counselling, face-to-face counselling. The company was performing, as I said, extremely well, double-digit growth, and we, as a leadership team coming through and on the other side of the IPO, recognized that as an organization we could continue to drive that analog organic expansion, and we did believe that would ensure that we continued to hold our leadership position in the markets that we were in. But of course we could see that there were potential disruptors on the horizon. And I think, in retrospect, we took the right steps, and that's to begin a significant, bold transformation at a time when the company was performing extremely well. We did that with the knowledge that technology combined with capability and a focus on the customer can lead to greater returns for the organization. We set ourselves the ambition of becoming a platform company and driving platform economics in that platform model. We recognized to do that we needed to anchor our strategy around the customer experience and the customer journey as fundamentally a services business. So we began that transformation probably in around 2016 with a significant capital investment in technology and a clear vision around what we wanted to layer in and combine with our analog business, being our people across the world. Of course, challenges emerged, in particular, just ensuring that we have the right capabilities in place. We did put in a new HR system that enabled us to upskill our teams in preparation for the overlay of technology. But as we moved through it, even though we had contracted strategic partners to assist us around the world, we recognized that we really need to build this capability into the business. And with that in mind, in 2017, we acquired a company called Hot Courses in the UK, which were the leading global digital student engagement a company with about 70 million international students visiting their platforms for course search on an annual basis. And they, in many respects, it was 100 people in London and around 100 people in Chennai who were primarily developers, really assisted us to accelerate our transformation. In recognition of that, we also had to upskill our people and add into our countries and regions a new level of digital capability. So we went on a aggressive hiring push and hired in 16 new digital roles in each one of our regions. I think just coming back to a couple of the key points that really needed deep consideration and assisted us. I mean, firstly was the shift in culture from an analog to a digital business, which is primarily around agility and innovation, and having the organization recognize the absolute importance of the customer. I think to Dick's point around the differences in the markets we operate in is being attuned to that from a customer perspective. So ensuring that the voice of the customer was integrated into our digital transformation strategy, and shifting the organization from a focus on perfection to a recognition that there would be acceptance of failure, albeit fail fast. And of course, in some cultures around the world, that's not an easy shift, but something that we worked on and ensured that we did shift from a cultural perspective. I think what we found as we've moved through this. Firstly, the performance of the business pre-COVID was spectacular. We were able to accelerate our growth and our scale. I think one of the things that we really noted through the experience was the power of data. And as we overlaid our digital and our platform model, we started to get much deeper insights into our customers and our markets in real time. And as an organization, I have to say, whilst that shouldn't be a surprise, I think the extent of the opportunity probably was. Now that we've completed much of the digital transformation and we've now built what is, I think, the world's most comprehensive data set on international students, it's enabling us to more rapidly adapt our services and our approach to customers to differentiate ourselves at scale, but nuanced by market. And I think that puts us in a very strong position in the future. I think as we go forward, transformation is almost the status quo for us now, as the culture has shifted, and we look for new opportunities and really lock in the design of that digital hybrid model, enabling us to then leverage data for future opportunities. So let me pause there and now pass on to Emma.
Thank you, Andrew, for that introduction, of course, Mukund, and to everyone for joining. I mean, the first thing I wanted to address is this is more a mindset and an education piece at the C level as the organisation leader that needs to set the vision for what your future organisation needs to look like, who you're targeting as a customer base, and then really personalise it, your understanding and your learning. So I have a deep passion for Asia, cemented when I was President and Chief Operating Officer of ASX. So traveling to Asia and China from the mid-2000s quarterly, literally seeing cities and companies grow quarter to quarter at a rate yet to be seen in rest of world. So it's interesting today as we talk about the speed of digital transformation compressing in weeks instead of years with COVID impacting. Asia's been growing at this pace without the constraint of the way business used to be done for now decades. And it's an interesting thing to have observed prior to us ourselves now having to release the shackles of how we may have thought as a mindset or done business, or the speed that we made decisions, investment, took risk, to what we've had to survive the changing business circumstances in this COVID and post-COVID world. So just to give you a sense for me, when I started traveling into Asia, it's when I really, Dig made the point, there's 0.33% of the global population in Australia, and Asia holds 60% of the population, held across 48 countries, each with its own culture, language, and nuances. So our mindset as an Australian leader is often quite complacent and protectionary because we don't have the competition, nor are we having to embrace the massive opportunities and the adoption and speed of digital and mobile as technology moved faster in deployment in many Asian countries than it did here. And by 2040, with 50% of the world's GDP and over 40% of the world's consumptions of goods being expected from Asia, this is a massive opportunity for Australian businesses. And it was actually from watching this adoption of technology, digital, the way that, many of the consumers and countries were building strategies where bricks and mortar was not core to a brand, or the empowerment of the consumer was so much around the digital experience. That was kind of where Digivisor started. So taking Altium from largely Australian business to 97% of its revenues being earned overseas, Digivisor started as a global thinking company first. We were serving global clients in Hong Kong and Singapore in our week 4th of inception. We're now 10 years later and we have about 60% of our revenues earned overseas. We have a physical presence in 7 countries in Asia. We're serving 14 countries deeply, although we work on global remits for clients like Microsoft, Lenovo, Google, Thinxtra, and also then down into SMEs and startups who are looking to Asia as that opportunity. So apart from that mindset, I wanted to share the lessons that I believe were as true in a corporate, in an ASX listed company with a large organization and resources far greater than when I started Digivisor. But the lessons to me that I learnt there, I applied to Digivisor, and it's why we've been very successful in being able to grow our understanding, our footprint, and now our ability to help companies as they go to market and serve and delight their customers with our digital marketing, analytics, technology, and agency services. So here are the lessons that I thought were worth sharing. Personal relationships matter in Asia more than any other region. And having opened up markets everywhere, US, EMEA, I really feel this is truer in Asia than anywhere else. And I think it's really based on what I love about business and good business is it is about proving your genuine investment, your trust, your respect, your cultural awareness, the quality of people that you're bringing to the table that is there to recognize those opportunities, your understanding of the key businesses, stakeholders, customers that you're looking to serve. And when that joint commitment is made, that genuine feeling that you are there for the same reasons that companies are trying to be successful and grow at rapid rates, you are successful. So that's the first. Personal relationships matter. I think the second is investing in region. So there's a view and a lot of expansion into Asia discussions many years ago that I used to be invited to talk about was how did you offshore some of your, maybe processing elements, your lower costs where you weren't necessarily differentiated. Some companies made the mistake of putting things like call centers overseas, which is your core thing that differentiates you often to your competitor. But I believe that investing in region comes with who do you invest in? Best people. And often that wage arbitrage is not there as much as what you think, because good people are worth every dollar you spent when you consider the opportunity that you're looking to generate and create. And to get best people, everyone is also looking for them. So you do need to invest in the region. You need to personally invest. You need to do that through hiring best local talent, in taking the time to determine whether it's through a reseller or through your country head, who is going to represent the values and be able to truly emulate the cultural aspects from a values to customer aspect, even though you might be managing that within the cultural differences of the country and here. The third lesson is, people think it's just translation. It's not, it's localization. And that comes again with your understanding of each of those countries. Localization is understanding countries' nuances, language, public holidays, celebrations, locations, phrasing, politics at the time. It's very difficult to do that if you think you can do it all online. There is something very innate about that ability to localize. And again, that comes to what infrastructure you put to help your business actually genuinely be seen to be investing, being able to provide the level or the right level of customer service or engagement that you need in those countries to represent you. The fourth point I'd like to make is, and this is true here in Australia or everywhere, is you need to grow your people to grow your business. And so one of the big success aspects we've had is in hiring that top talent, really good talent, is really investing in their development plans and awareness across countries and regions, and be able to have that as a twofold, two-way learning. But if you grow your people and you invest in their development, this is also true with resellers. One of the biggest ways and fastest ways growing in Asia and China was investing in the business skills of the owners of those businesses. So how to do business planning, how to do best hiring, how to do performance management, remuneration and reward, incentives. The more that we train, the better the outcome. And that's different from doing product knowledge, right? It's a very different way to do it. But the principle is grow people to grow your business, and making sure that you're looking beyond the country, right? Good people have ambitions, and we are a global economy. So it's important that you're getting the best of your diversity and the best of your people, thinking across that broader opportunity. The fifth point is the cultural awareness across the entire organisation. I mean, yes, it's time zones and it's cultural learnings and it's sharing about people, but it's important to move away from a headquarter mentality, a headquarter, this is where decisions are made, knowing how to do business and setting up really good cross-team practices, shared learnings. So even, one of the ways our company understood and built great empathy was having briefings of what was actually happening in terms of COVID and politics and impacts on customers and economy being presented from local teams across teams, so they could kind of collaborate, like what were the possibilities of responding. But there's an aspect of the genuine relationship building that underpins that, but it's a value in your business that you need to build and protect. The sixth thing, which I touched on before, is the think digital first. So it's a very mobile m-commerce opportunity there, particularly with many of those countries going to digital banking for the very first time. Marketplaces where we might have been thinking two-way tend to be three-way. All rules can be broken, but brands are not built on bricks and mortar. It's very much on how you're creating a frictionless, empowering experience and able to know as much about them using the great digital footprint that digital allows, and social and search and all the great things that are our opportunities. But it's an important mindset that you build, that this digital first is actually the only way. And Andrew touched on the importance of analytics and insights, using that data footprint to make really good decisions, and looking at that at a country by country. And actually in the larger countries like China, it's a regional by regional within China. There is no one China in terms of the strategy to have to deploy there. So that's then how do you use technology? So if you've been built with this view to be global first, the way that you collaborate and set your tools and your information, and whether it's Teams or Zoom or Slack or Google, whatever your tools are that you're using, it's important to set up the best practices that sit around that ensures mutual understanding, and the connection and projects and the possibilities. So we found things like the cross-team projects, the sharing wins, pairing cross-region, buddy systems. There's an app called Donut to be able to spin to people, so that they're able to meet people that they wouldn't necessarily have met in their day-to-day and have a non-work conversation that builds all these great feelings of coherence. And then my last point is ensure you do have strong banking and HR contracts and understanding. So that was one of the things that, even though I didn't have the big resources as I did an ASX company of being able to deploy the big consulting firms, still having the right infrastructure from the start has helped us scale enormously and be able to have very strong practices in terms of the way that we can have money in and out, flowing from country to our people, and ensuring that that's easy for us to manage. And I think when you have that mindset change, that investment in that culture, that personal view as your most senior leader in your organization, and really recognize those opportunities, you can't but not love what's possible. My feeling is every time I invest in Asia, the return is just so much greater. Might take longer, I think Dig made that point, but it still returns greater. So yeah, I will now hand over.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Asialink and Mukund, for inviting me to join the panel today. Having a footprint in key Asian centres, as the CBA does across Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Tokyo, and throughout Indonesia through our retail presence, it gives us local insights into Asian markets to benefit our Australian clients, those that are looking to grow in the region, as well as bringing Australian insights as Australia's largest bank to local clients that have trade and investment flows with Australia. Australia actually remains a very attractive destination for investment capital from Asia, as much as Asia represents a growth market for Australian companies. And I guess, as highlighted by not only this report, Winning in Asia, but also previous reports in the series, now our clients increasingly have international growth aspirations and demand best-in-class solutions from their banking partners that provide access to pools of capital, be that our own or third parties, to support those trade and investment flows. And at CBA, we're always monitoring the market closely. And over the last few years, we've really watched some macro trends and shifts taking place that were affecting our clients and their industries. And these forces were not only shaping the global economy, but also the domestic economy, and were blurring and eliminating traditional industry boundaries. And in so doing so, we're changing the way our clients were thinking about their own businesses. So as a result of some of these shifts we were observing, we took a decision about 2 years ago to reorganize our institutional business into what we call an ecosystem operating model. An example of that would be that we saw real asset investors in real estate start to look at adjacencies in infrastructure as a way of enhancing the value of those real estate assets. So no longer were our traditional separate industry coverage models for real estate and infrastructure relevant. So we brought the two together under a Future Cities banner. We then realized that what was going to power those future cities were highly sophisticated networks driven by technology. So we added our smart networks team into the mix. So this is not just about renaming the way we define business, but importantly about grouping our clients that are facing common challenges and risk factors together, and getting our bankers to think about those challenges in exactly the same way as our clients in order to solve their problems. In our business bank, we're very well equipped to support Australian businesses in their pursuit of growth in Asia. And in Australia, we have about 60 bankers specialising in Asian business, working closely with our business customers to help them grow, nurture connections, and unlock those new opportunities in Asian markets. Mukund asked me to touch on some key areas of advice that we would provide to Australian companies looking to expand into Asia. And I guess the beauty of going last amongst our speakers is that each one of them, Dig, Andrew and Emma, have touched on some of these areas. So I kind of feel as I'm probably summarizing a little bit, but there's certainly a number of things to focus on. And harking back to the Winning in Asia report, it's a great read on some of the traits that successful companies in Asia have in common. So today I'd probably start with the first point: do your homework on the market. I think as Dig highlighted right from the outset, Asia is not one homogenous market, and the opportunity set is clearly going to differ from country to country and sometimes even city by city. So what works in China is not necessarily going to work in India. What works in Singapore may not work in Cambodia or Vietnam. So you're going to need to be prepared to customize as you enter a new market and take into account those local customer preferences. You need to work out how you're going to enter the market. What's your business model? And there's numerous ways to enter a new market, but each one of them requires building relationships with stakeholders that will help drive your success, whether that's through joint ventures, a distributor, or even looking at inorganic growth opportunities through M&A. As Emma touched on, the use of technology is really important, but be physically present. It's certainly easy to underestimate how technologically sophisticated markets in Asia are. So, use the best available technology to drive the best customer experience, and then use the data that you can extract from that technology to spot changing customer preferences. Tech is a great enabler and probably will be more so in a post-COVID environment, but it's no substitute for being on the ground, whether in a regional centre such as Hong Kong or Singapore or Shanghai, or direct into one of the other markets. And as I was flicking through some of the prior reports, I noticed a quote from an ex-colleague of mine on the Australian Chamber of Commerce board in Singapore, Tina Pizarev, who was the CEO of Icon Sock at the time. But she basically says that you can't do Asia fly in, fly out. You need to be on the ground to build and nurture those local relationships that will ultimately help drive your success. And that takes time and effort. It's not until you're on the ground that you appreciate the full extent of opportunities available to you. The third point I'd make is, and again, it has been touched on, Emma touched on it, building a team of Asia-capable staff is key to showing commitment to the market. They don't have to be of Asian ethnicity, but they do need to understand how to do business in the markets that you're targeting. It might be language skills or a cultural appreciation. Business in Asia, as Emma touched on, is much more relationship oriented than we see in other regions, and certainly more so than in the West, where we do tend to have a more transactional approach to business. Relationships take time, and you need to be patient and typically have a longer term investment horizon. And the term patient capital, I think, hits the nail on the head for me. And it's just as relevant for listed companies as it is for private ones. And it's probably no surprise that some of the most successful Australian companies in Asia have been the ones that have been at it the longest. And then finally, there's an immense amount of resources available to Australian companies looking to establish a business in Asia. And I'd encourage you to use all of those resources, particularly the Australian Chambers of Commerce. They are represented in 9 out of the 10 ASEAN countries, throughout China, Japan, Korea, and provide a wealth of knowledge and networking opportunities to really help facilitate entry into the market. The other call out I would make is use Austrade. They're typically located in the various high commissions or embassies around the region, and they all have resources that can provide, say, information and contacts, and ultimately are focused on helping you be a success. So those are the key high-level advice points. I think they're fairly generic, but I think it's amazing how just getting the basics right really does set you up for success. So on that note, I'll hand back to Mukund for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Dig. If I could welcome you all back for this panel discussion. Some terrific insights there, and there have been some great questions that have come through. I'll pick up with one question, which has come from multiple participants, which is this idea of identifying, recruiting, and retaining Asia-capable talent. those with the knowledge, the experience, the networks that enable you to, in effect, successfully develop and execute your strategies in one or more markets, both at the management level and also at the board level. Obviously recognizing that you're representing management, but we'd love to also hear from you of the efforts being made by your boards to ensure that there are those capabilities within the board level as well. Dig, I may start with you and then go to Andrew.
Yeah, it's certainly a key issue, and when we first went into Asia, we usually had an expat leading the startup in a country, and I think that made sense because they had specific knowledge of the company. But we've now transitioned to all local teams and all local management, so the country managers are always local, and I think that's critical because they have that understanding. And then the other part is from a head office perspective. Head office has to listen and make sure, listen, not direct, sometimes direct, but be very understanding that it is local presence, understanding responsiveness that is key, and it has to be done on the ground. And just very quickly onto the board level, it is important to, I think, to person management level to bring people with Asian experience through. So prior to being CEO, I ran Asia Pacific for Cochlear. So that certainly helps me. From the board levels, our directors, certainly some of them have significant Asian experience, but we also use external advisors. So we have a number of advisors that we use, particularly for China, to help give us guidance at a management and board level.
Thank you, Dig. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks. And listen, I think this really gets to the crux in my mind of what it takes to be successful in Asia. I can give an example where I've got a search underway for a regional director for Southeast Asia, which has been open for probably almost a year now, and we're unwilling to compromise. And when I say unwilling to compromise, for us, as Dig noted, it's all about finding that capability within the market. I have probably 30 years history in working in Asia, and a lot of that from multinationals running their regional businesses. And I can tell you we made a lot of mistakes, and that was bringing in expats over the top of locals, and they just don't have the investment in culture and time that's required to drive long-term sustainable growth. So I'm now a very, very big believer of building capability in market. All of our country managers and regional directors, they come from the markets we operate in. We do seek expertise that has global experience. In particular, we find that brings a level of sophistication and maybe the macro picture that really assists us, in particular with systems and processes. But to points made earlier, I mean, having our leaders as local leaders and being willing then to give them the empowerment and accountability, which I think goes to the point of devolving authority from head office into the regions is critical to our ability to be innovative and work quickly on the ground. So I think that's just an absolute key requirement for success. I mean, as far as the board level, I think to your point, I mean, I can speak to management. I've got a lot of experience in Asia, and so do a number of our board members. I think it's that network that the board seeks to connect with and give them the insights as well as to what's going on the ground is really critical in understanding what we're doing.
Terrific. Some great insights there, Andrew. And I'm going to build on that by bringing Emma and Scott into the discussion. Emma, your organization, Digivisa, as you highlighted, was literally born global. And you've been running incredibly fast. In less than 10 years of presence in 7 countries, 60% of your revenues from the region, and you're operating across 14 markets. So in a sense, that historical view that private companies are very good at patient capital, in your case, you've brought the speed of an ASX company into a private company, and you also have the patience that's required in order to deliver results. How do you balance that tension in the long term?
It's funny. I think actually, we're moving much, much faster than we did as an ASX listed company. And in fact, I have no patience because you don't have the cash runway or reserves. So I actually think, if anything, it was my experience and the confidence of knowing those markets that meant that I was prepared to take that risk. But the question that you just asked of Dig and Andrew, we hired local best people from the start at Altium, which was the most successful, and built those development plans, so succession plans, and how we could build the knowledge across the organization and do cross train. I just took those principles to Digivisor because I knew that worked very successfully. So I think you can still be successful without the large capital reserves. When you win with digital, it's interesting that we've been able to attract the high level of talent. We've had no problem hiring, but we're very good with digital in knowing how to engage and attract and be big in front of potential candidates moving forward, as well as our customers. So hiring has been a combination of, if you can point, because most people want a global view of their career and the opportunity to grow in a growth organization that is also able to help from a customer base, big, large multinationals and globals, you kind of leverage that to build the sense of security, and this is a better bet than maybe something actually a bit slower or conservative by view. So actually being fresh and nimble is actually and digital is part of what you use. But the principles about who you hire, they're the same.
Fantastic. Scott, just bringing you in here, one of the key areas in which CBA plays a really significant role in the region is through your Asian business banking team, which really supports medium-sized companies to expand successfully into the region. How do you, when you look at their business plans and strategies, also look to give them advice on capability issues? Is that something as a banker you feel comfortable doing?
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly, and it starts with us building our own capability, getting those Asian capabilities, from us, even utilizing them in Australia has become an increasing source of competitive advantage. I think the last population census showed that the majority of residents in Australia that were born overseas were now from Asia, not Europe, for the first time. So actually building that Asian capability and cultural sensitivity actually gives you a competitive advantage in your home market, not just into Asia. But you're right. I think working very much as a partner of businesses looking to establish in Asia, and it's not necessarily for us to prescribe one business model over another, but it's really to sort of handhold and work with customers to make sure that they're getting the right advice and they're tapping into all of that information that's available, making some introductions and helping them build and nurture those relationships that are going to be absolutely fundamental to their success going forward. And that starts in Australia. We can then continue that journey in the region, but it really starts in the home market by building that Asian capability in Australia.
Thanks, Scott. I want to pick up on a few threads that are coming through in comments and questions. But I want to frame this a little bit more positively. So as you see in the public debate in the media, it's littered with stories of failed expansion and the destruction sometimes of shareholder value, and it tends to almost be overstated in terms of Australian companies. Yet the research and winning in Asia highlights that with our ASX 200 companies between 2 billion and 5 billion, which are internationally oriented, generate over 82% greater shareholder returns than their domestic peers. And it's about 36% greater shareholder returns in the group that are over 5 billion. So my question to you, Dig and Andrew, and I'm going to come again to Emma and to Scott on this as well, is how do we change this perception when there are so many companies genuinely outside of materials and mining, and you all represent that have actually performed very, very successfully, yet there is this desire to hold on to elements of failure, which doesn't spur confidence. How can we spur confidence from your success?
I think, if I can start, look, I think what you're doing now and what you've done with the Winning in Asia report is very important. I think we need to promote the successes. And, I think there's probably some statistics on this, but I think you've probably got to talk about successes 10 times more than you think you do, because failures always get more airtime. And I think then we've got to back that up with what we're talking about, which is how do companies become successful? What are the key ingredients to being successful anywhere, but particularly in Asia? And I think then the third bit is, we all hear this investor bit of, or investors don't support investing in Asia. When I talk to investors on that, they say, no, we do. What we don't support is companies investing where they don't have competitive advantage. And if you've got competitive advantage, if you've got a clear plan and you're prepared to hold the course to execute that, then you get support. I haven't ever been challenged by our shareholders on our investment in Asia from the perspective of, is that why you do it?
Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's a great question and a significant challenge. I think, as Dig said, these kinds of forums are great. Australia generally doesn't like to raise up the organisations that reflect success. There seems to be a little bit of that in the culture, whereas other markets, maybe like the US and others, would put them on the top and herald their successes. I think equally, just Australian companies embracing the experience from their teams and people they may have who have worked in Asia. I think it is required to have a different perspective, that experience and understanding, and embracing maybe people in their teams to assist them in looking deeply into the Asia opportunity. Clearly, as we see it, there's massive growth opportunities within the Asian marketplace, but you have to get in and you have to be on the ground and you have to know the customer. You've got to be willing to do the work, and we've been there for 50 years. I mean, and that's a long time, but that knowledge, that experience, the building of the brand has been critical to our success. I think the other thing I would say is from my perspective, this is only my perspective, so take it with a grain of salt. I think many Australian boards are quite conservative in their approach to Asia, and I think, as we said, it does require long-term thinking and long-term commitments, and you have to have the ability to ride out your investments in Asia, and not every one of them is going to be a success. So instead of packing your bags up, it's really learning from it and doubling down, getting deeper into the market. I think the opportunity's there. It comes down to understanding it, having the talent, and then the fortitude to see it through.
If I can bring you in here from the private company perspective, because obviously we don't hear as much about the successes of private companies. What can we do to better, share their stories and, again, spur confidence that goes across both public and private companies?
I mean, I think it was touched on, but I think education is key, and I think that's education, our education system. I think it's media and how media report. I think it's how we financially report in terms of regional growth versus investors talk money, but it's very important that you're taking them on the journey as well. I just wanted to talk to one particular thing at Altium when we were going into China, and I've seen some questions talking about IP and IP theft. That was the biggest thing that all the software companies had agreed upon, was this gun-to-head approach, that they were going to police piracy and have a very culturally difficult conversation of, you're using our software illegally, gun-to-head, we're going to, to take some action. Interestingly, by personalizing it and educating and taking, the board and senior members of the organization through, we came up with an alternate approach, which was to compete with it, which was around education. So rewriting education, investing in the local education institutions there, localizing support, to be able to actually not have a cost on the software, but have the cost on the training and certification going through. So you no longer had a discussion around illegal use of software, and instead you had a very positive conversation about making engineers, globally valuable to wherever innovation was going to be done. So I think that is just an example of how you need to think differently, but it's actually taking people on the journey. We and anyone who's doing this will look to others for success, but how do we tell our story? So this is a great example, but I think it's more than that. It's education, hence why any opportunity you can send your own team, set your board meeting into any one of the countries you're thinking about investing in. Like it's very possible to see just the scale and what might be required differently to how you've been doing business by actually personalizing it, bringing them on the journey and communicating that back so that your investors or potential investors are actually excited by the same things you are.
Scott, how are you building confidence?
Yeah, well, I think first we do need to admit that Asia is complex. It's hard, and as we've talked about, it's not a homogenous market. It's diverse by language, culture, religion, forms of government, regulation, ways of doing business. We have to acknowledge it is hard. But I think certainly, as Dig touched on, I think success breeds success. Let's get some of those success stories out there that definitely exist in the Australian market. We perhaps don't shine enough of a spotlight on them. But success in any market, and Asia is no different, requires a long-term strategy. It requires having a competitive advantage, and it requires execution prowess in terms of delivering that strategy. I think also, as we've touched on a bit, you do need to be a little bit patient in Asia because it is very relationship oriented, and relationships take time. So if I think about why perhaps there aren't more success stories, maybe in some cases we have just given up a little bit too quickly. And if I think about why that might be, it's because Australia's just come off a world record run of 30 years or close to of economic growth. There's probably been easier growth to have in the home market that brings with it less risk. Now, unfortunately, that growth trajectory has hit a shuddering halt, and that domestic growth may not be available for companies in the next few years. And maybe that prompts more companies to think about Asia as a growth opportunity in their business, given that growth's not available at home. So look, I think the more success stories we get out there in the market, the more people will go, look, if they can do it, why can't we?
Very powerful. Thanks, Scott. Look, in the interest of time, I'm going to close the panel discussion there, but it's been a very rich discussion. And I'd like to thank all four of you, our wonderful speakers, for your insights. Dig, I'd like to start by thanking you. Very inspiring to hear about your long-term commitment to the region, to China, your investment on the ground there, and the very insightful comment you made, for instance, on your pricing strategy to ensure that you could actually meet the needs of the market there without actually giving up on quality. So customization without compromising was certainly a very powerful takeaway from your business model approach there. Andrew, congratulations on the great value that you've unlocked through digital transformation in combination with your organic and inorganic strategy. We've all had the opportunity to read in the press the great value that you've been able to deliver by doing so, and it's great to hear it firsthand. I encourage everyone to please read the two case studies on Cochlear and on IDP education and the report. Both Dig and Andrew gave their own personal time to help in the development of those case studies, which I have to say is very uncommon to get that level of time and commitment from senior leaders. So thank you so much. Emma, we love having you at our forums. You are actively involved with both the Growing with Asia and Activating Asia reports. Your organization was born global, over 60% of your revenues in the region. As I said previously, a presence in 7 markets. There's so much to learn from for both our public and private companies. Thank you for sharing. And Scott, thank you for flying the flag amongst our banks. They're so critical. You mentioned the chambers, you mentioned Austrade, but I would say just as important are our banks, and to have the Commonwealth Bank in the region so committed, not just to the top end of town, but to medium-sized companies through your Asian business banking area, sends a very strong message in terms of the trade and investment potential that we can realize. So thank you to all 4 of you for your participation. I'd like to thank all of our participants on behalf of this event's partners, CANZ, CBA, and Asialink Business. For more information on our upcoming events, please visit the Asialink Business website, asialinkbusiness.com.au. To download the report, please visit our Winning in Asia website, winninginasia.com.au. I would like to encourage all of you who have participated in today's event to please complete the survey that will be available immediately at the end of this event. Your feedback truly matters to us. Thank you again for joining this event. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our 4 wonderful CEOs. I wish them all the very best with their company's strategies in the region. And I thank each of you for participating in today's event. I look forward to future engagement with you. Thank you.